and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, it's defensive wish list night. Are you ready?
This is better. It's better than offensive wish list night. Free agency is so boring this year, Greg, to me. I was texting with Eric this week about it and just saying, like, my lists, you know what I will say? There's reoccurring names almost every year on my list, whether they're guys that are just getting 1 year deals out there, they pop back up every couple of years on the list.
There's
I'm like,
guys I laugh like one of these years we're going to get him.
we're gonna,
One
yeah,
of
it
these years we're
happens
going to
all the
get him.
time though. Where a year, Linval Joseph was like 3
Yeah,
years after I
yeah.
had him. Mike Edwards, like these guys do pop up and they come back around, and fits are fits. But this year more than most, even with this side of the ball, obviously has real need, and they're gonna make some moves here. This year more than most feels like, man, this roster's pretty much in a good spot though, and free agency doesn't seem to be the way to attack a lot of it. But there's definitely gonna be some changes here on the defensive side.
100%. I think it's an area that we're going to see some material movement. I think that we could see a couple of the groups pretty well made over. I don't think there's any like starting spots per se open on offense. Maybe technically a wide receiver could come in and start, I guess.
Sure.
But in general, I think like 10 or 11 of the offensive starters we already pretty well know. On defense, I do think we'll see some guys that will come in and be day one starters that could come in and join the team, whether in the draft or through free agency. So I will let you have dealer's choice. Do you want to start at the front and move back, or do you want to start at the back and move forward?
People's attention spans are low, so I think we start with the hottest
Yeah,
stuff here first, and the juicy stuff, and get right into it and talk about. You can go edge or interior defensive line.
sure.
I would say free agency leans a little better in the interior if it
Yeah.
was me.
Yeah, I still had some names out there in,
Sure.
in both lists, but again, similar to last week's show, we are going to have some guys I mentioned that are from the over the cap potential cut list. We've already
Sure.
seen some of those guys get cut loose, some of the guys be mentioned as possibilities. I actually split my defensive tackles into two buckets, the more traditional one tech guys
Mm-hmm.
and some of the three tech guys. Obviously, there's names like a Milton Williams who is an awesome player coming off a heater of a season with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's going to get a crazy amount of money. I think he might get, I don't think it's crazy that he gets $20 million a year. I think he's going to get more money than Ed Oliver signed for.
Yeah,
Last year, I think he might get $20 million a year. So we're not going to be
good for
spending
him.
in that range, I don't believe. But let's start with the one techs. I think we just saw a guy like Sheldon Rankins get released. A guy that I liked in previous seasons, T.R. Tart, is out there. DJ Reader is a guy that could possibly get released from Cincinnati. He was an expensive signing that we liked last year. And then I'll leave the number one pick that I know is going to be your favorite one tech here on our list.
Yeah, I've got a couple as well. I'm also with Tier Tart. He was on my list last year, still going to be there on my list. Derek Nottie is another guy on
Yeah.
my list who has popped up here before and has just always gone back to KC, but I do like that role. Probably not for the starter end, but just a backup rotational guy. You still have to address it. Sebastian Joseph Day, another one that Eric was big on
I
last
listed
year.
him in my three techs, but he can play both. He can
Yeah, I
do
think
both.
he can do both. It's 6'4", 310. Like that's a big boy right there. I think that you can get a little bit more out of. But for me, this is my number one free agent target in general that isn't already Bills returning free agent and re-sign somebody would be DJ Jones. Greg, this is a guy that when the Bills were going into that Broncos game, when I was watching that side of the ball, just stood out to me. And honestly, I started salivating then preparing for that game. That's exactly what I need the Bills to do. Like you pair that next to Ed Oliver, and I think we can do more on the edges. And God, my whole offseason plan is let's trade everything, an embarrassing amount of stuff to get a Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, give me any elite defensive end. But I think if you get the right one tech, I don't even know that you need the elite high end. I think they've got, I think Greg Rousseau can do enough. I think if you unlock Ed Oliver ability to be a havoc creating, penetrating three tech with a good one tech, I think that solves a lot of problems.
It does. It does. And he's my number one as well. I knew he would be on your list. He's maybe like disturbingly so the most consensus cover one free agent target I remember in a little
I
while.
think he just
Um,
does what everybody is hoping that position does. That's why.
I got a little bit of extra good news. I don't know if you saw this because you were just getting back from vacation. Um, The value applied to him by overthecap.com, who I think is the best in the business. I think they are better at this than SpotTrack is. I think they have better projections and valuations, and I will say it matches with PFF. And Brad Spielberger, who used to be at Over the Cap, now runs the free agent function and analysis over at PFF. Brad has DJ Jones as his 97th free agent. Over the Cap did not have him in their top 75, and we even checked in with Nick Corte and with the guys that I have relationships with over there, and they said, yeah, they had him maybe fringe top 100, but they had him as a $4 to $5 million a year guy. If that is the case, it is the easiest slam dunk ever, and it's almost like I'm petrified that it's going to be like the Jeremy Chin situation last year, where when this signing comes out,
Somebody else is going to get him for $4 million. Yeah.
got him for $3 million. Like
Yeah.
we couldn't sign Jeremy Chin or Atlanta with Justin Simmons for $5 million, and say, wait, Atlanta signed Justin Simmons we couldn't get Justin Simmons for $5 million. I'm petrified that we have this go out, and all of a sudden it's the Seattle Seahawks have signed DJ Jones for 2 years, $9 million, $4.5 million a year. And I'm like, wait, we couldn't get DJ Jones. So it's kind of sad because it's a guy that I love, and he's been a huge favorite of ours at Cover One. But we owe Daquan Jones $7.75 million in cash. The cap space isn't great. I don't think it matches up perfect. I don't really care if we just release him. He doesn't have any guaranteed money out of that number. Like we can figure that out. And just give DJ Jones the cash we were going to give Daquan Jones. That's a really nice upgrade for us in the short term, and would be a perfect fit. If you tell me we get him for, even if it's not as low as that, is 2 years, 15 million, and $7.5 million a year, and we get him for that, that's a slam dunk. You give me him and then a Tyleek Williams in the draft, or a Kenneth Grant, or whatever, other nice athletic big defensive
Sure.
tackle somewhere in those top 3 picks. That fixes so many things for us. If you give me 2 nice, big, powerful athletic pieces there, Ed Oliver's better, Gregory Rousseau is better, whoever we put opposite Gregory Rousseau is better. With that in place, it's a huge function that we have, and I want to see 2 nice additions, one in free agency, one in the draft.
Yeah, I think he didn't get enough credit for the success of the Denver Broncos defensive line last year. We saw the sack numbers for Benito and the sack numbers for, the pressure statistics and stuff like that. And he was thought of as just, a run stuffing guy, but he also demonstrated the ability to wreak havoc.
Collapse the pocket so the quarterback can't step up. When you see those guys loop around the outside and they miss because the quarterback stepped up, they can't do that if the pocket's getting collapsed in front of them.
Yeah, I'm not lying, Greg. Every game that I watched in preparation, I watched 5 games for the Broncos, and I kind of picked a couple in the middle of the season too. He stood out to me as just not necessarily game wrecking in the way that like your Myles Garrett would.
He's
be
not a
like
Chris Jones.
Correct.
He's not Quinnen Williams.
But he was
he's not
wrecking his
Dexter
one-on-one,
Lawrence,
causing a running back to bounce out to the outside. Wasn't be able to get into that gap. Collapsing the pocket on a quarterback, getting somebody else a sack. And the Bills just didn't have that. It looked disjointed at the one tech a lot of the time, getting pushed off the ball. I don't think you'll see that with DJ Jones. And so that's why it's such a priority. And I think Bean's got to see it too, right? If we're at Cover One, totally all committed to how much this makes sense, he sees that. If that value lines up, I'll be shocked if the scenario you talked about played out where somebody else gets him for that deal. I'll actually be frustrated. But I do think some of these backup options that we talked about, a Tier Tart, who else did you mention?
Jaron Reed is the guy that I could see. Jaron Reed's the guy that could make sense. You mentioned Sebastian Joseph Day. I think Sheldon Rankins is in that group, and I know I saw Anthony Prohaska talk about Roy Lopez from the Cardinals as well. I think those are some guys that could be kind of backup plans for that job.
Yeah.
All right. Moving out to the edge, I think there's an interesting area where they're obviously trading for
that's
the
all I'm
elite
interested
guy.
in, Greg.
So at the end last week, I told everyone that we were going to have shows like this coming up, and obviously Air Raid Hour, Disguise Coverage, all the other guys were going to have shows on how to use the money. So we didn't spend a lot of time on what we do with the cap space, but we gave everyone one nice splurge move. I think Ant wanted to trade for DK Metcalf. I think that we had one out there for Trey Hendrickson. I'm trying to remember what Judge did. Judge did something shockingly reasonable, and we were all very surprised. I gave up the farm for Micah Parsons. I wanted to go out and do that. If we're going to do it, give me the 25-year-old who is 4 years younger than Myles Garrett. If I'm trading up all the crazy draft, of course I would want Myles Garrett or Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson. Any of those guys would be amazing. Out of the guys who are available, I do think, it's like we normally do. We probably want the guy who loses musical chairs. So I think there's a top tier of 4 guys that they would all have to lose this game in musical chairs. But if they did, and we could find that, hey, Khalil Mack or Josh Sweat's the least likely because he's young and coming up an awesome Super Bowl. He could probably was on pace to be Super Bowl MVP. Hassan Reddick or Chase Young. Those 4 guys, if one of those ends up, they're probably a guy that not only would we not get in the first wave of free agency, it's probably a guy we would sign like 2 weeks into training camp because they're finally like, all right, fine, I'm not going to get the money I wanted, but I guess I'll go chase a ring with Buffalo for this 1-year deal they're offering with a bunch of incentives and stuff like that. But if Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Chase Young, I'll throw Joey Bosa in there if he got released. If one of those guys was in there, they're at a tier where that would be a huge addition, but the money would have to be right, and it would have to be because they were disappointed in their market and didn't get as much as they thought they were going to get.
I think Chase Young is the new Jadeveon Clowney, where he was consistently in free agency and consistently like one of these guys where we talked about like, well, maybe he gets a higher end because he's a former first round pick and there's still the athleticism and all that stuff and there's some production. And then he would get a 1-year pretty reasonable deal and he'd go on to have 10 sacks and like still be productive. And there's kind of a mercenary at that point in his
Yannick
career.
Ngakwe was like that for a bunch of years in a
Ngakwe was
row.
I think Chase Young is stuck in this spot in his career.
And if we want to be one of the 1-year stops along his way, that's fine.
I think that out of those guys that's most likely to fall in that scenario, Chase Young makes the most sense to me. It would be great to have Khalil Mack come back for one season. I think
I will
he's still
say
productive.
Hassan Reddick's still really good.
Hassan Reddick's still really good. Yeah, that is actually a tier up for me. I think you're going to pay for Hassan Reddick. I don't think he's going to lose.
I'm super curious for him. His holdout and everything like that was so weird. I'm super curious. He is going to be, I don't know when he turns 31.
He'll be 31 in the season next year.
So like that one, I'm a little, again, it's going to have to be because these guys don't get the amount of money they think they're going to get. And then they end up settling because we're Buffalo and they want to come play with Josh Allen to have a chance to win a championship.
Yes, I have another sort of tier that is interesting to me in this defensive end room. I love Dante Fowler. If you could get him, he's just over 30 years old. Honestly, like at 33 years old, like I would have DeMarcus Lawrence come in and see what he's still up to. He's had injury that brought him down a little bit in production this past year. And another guy like that, Matthew Judon's 2 years away from 17 sacks. Atlanta was in a great situation. He's had dealt with some injury. I don't know.
I can't believe that defense ended up as bad as what it did with adding Judon and adding Justin Simmons and like I really and they already had nice pieces. Like I still don't get Grady Jarrett and like they had good personnel. That coaching staff just deserved to be fired as an abomination.
Yeah, and he seemingly got worse and worse here. Matthew Judon did over the last 2 years, and I don't know if maybe he has hit that cliff, right? He's 32 and a half. He'll be 33 here this year. So maybe he's hit the cliff and there's no more left in the tank, but he had back-to-back. It was like 15 sacks, 17 sack seasons
30,
with the
30
Patriots.
plus sacks in 2 years.
Yeah. I would give him a little bit of money and see if there's still any of that left in the tank.
I'm shocked you didn't say Josh Uche.
He's on my list. He's at the bottom of the list with like an minute it's like Uche. There's a couple other guys down there, but I don't
another guy I kind of had on the Dante Fowler level was Azeez Ojulari from the Giants. I think he would be like that's probably like we moved on from AJ Epinesa and gave somebody else the money. It would be like an Azeez Ojulari type guy.
Sure.
2 guys who were on the over the cap release list. I had mentioned Joey Bosa. It sounds like he's going to get released. More realistic options was Yetur Gross-Matos, who was around there before, and a guy who checks a lot of like Sean McDermott hustle guy, but like a better version of Casey Toohill is Sam Hubbard. Like he's always like opposite Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati, a lot of like hustle cleanup sacks and like collapsing the pocket, and would be a guy that basically like Dwayne Smoot. When Rousseau was off the field, we still would have a strong side edge to maintain there and kind of collapse the pocket, and you still need a bender on the other side. But like Sam Hubbard would be able to make it that we'd have a guy opposite or instead like back up to Rousseau that would still be able to maintain that strong edge and contain and collapse the pocket. And both of them can kick into 3-tech on passing downs and be there like Dwayne Smoot was, where he could play end or defensive tackle on pass rush.
You think they bring back Smoot?
I'd be fine with it.
They like him.
Dwayne Smoot made positive impacts. If he
Yeah.
stayed healthy the whole season, I think he would have been even better, but he made positive impacts the whole time.
Yeah.
Totally fine with him coming back.
Did you do any linebackers?
I listed a couple. I listed
really have
some.
one.
I listed some because I'm tired of, it seems every season we run into this game where like, oh yeah, if everybody had stayed healthy, it would have been cool. But now we're trying to figure out if we can afford, to play whoever and insert. Now it was AJ Klein 2 years ago, but we've had other scenarios where just we run through these different guys and like, all right, well, is Eddie Ulofoshio ready to play? Do we really want Nicholas Morrow to be playing? Is Bale Inspector a guy that we want taking real snaps?
Is he healthy? Is he ever healthy?
And so I know people are excited about Dorian Williams. I'm not even sure anybody we bring in pushes our top three, and that I think our top three are Bernard, Milano, and Dorian Williams. But like,
Definitely.
I'm now to the point where I kind of think I want a little bit better linebacker 4 that isn't just a special teams guy, isn't just a backup, and is maybe a little bit better than Nicholas Morrow. So you talk about some of the guys who were either previous good draft picks, now kind of scrambling around, signed cheap deals last year, like a Devin White or a Willie Gay Jr., where like, hey, they still could probably play some special teams, do some other stuff, but like, hey, maybe have a little bit more there. Alex Singleton was a guy that I liked out of that before he was with Denver, that I think could be one of those kind of guys. And then obviously, like, I wouldn't be shocked if Terrell Dodson came back. Like, he would be a guy that would make a lot of sense as an upgraded linebacker 4. We know that he can be a backup and play in a limited role. We know he can play special teams. I wouldn't be shocked if he was a guy that could make some sense.
I feel like Dotson's gonna have some random team give him like another starting. So
Maybe.
like he played pretty well for Miami down the stretch.
So he got a job in Seattle. It didn't work there, but then when he went to Miami, he played good. I could see Miami bringing it back to start.
Miami bringing back some defensive coaches gonna be like, yeah, that we need to get thumping linebackers to stop the run. Some guys I'm in the same vein, right? Like I think the top 3 is pretty hammered out. I would like a little bit more out of 4 because it seems to be something.
Push Ulofoshio, push those other guys. Give me a better Nick Morrow this year.
A guy that I've loved since the draft process, Oren Burks, played with the Eagles this last year, had some little limited amount of snap count. I think he can play special teams. I think he can play in a spot for you and provide some athleticism. So I like that. But that's about it. I think maybe a Taki is another guy that I think could be like
he's super Dodson-ish.
Yeah, like
you don't want him in coverage, but he's actually pretty good in run defense and pretty good at special teams.
Yeah, he can play some special teams. He can play some snaps, but
if he's downhill coming forward, you're okay.
I do think the Bills are probably going to have to invest some draft capital. I think what they really need to do is move past the Bale Inspector as their special teams development guy that is going to be that sort of hanging out in the 4th spot. He just isn't.
Could be one of those sneaky, like, hey, nobody expects it to be one of the top like 4th round picks or something like that, but could end up being one of the little bit more premium assets we use. We have like 2 4ths, 3 5ths, a whole bunch of different things. Like you could get a nice linebacker in one of those spots.
Yeah, and I think Bean talked about it a little bit too, is like planning for now and the future. The Matt Milano's future is not long in Buffalo, right? Like we're hoping
if it's 2 more years, we're super lucky. There's a real good chance this is last year of this version of Matt Milano in Buffalo.
Yes, yeah. So you got to start planning for that. There's got to be a succession plan. So it could fit a now and future need to.
So many people are screaming at you that it's obviously Dorian Williams. There's so many people screaming at you in their headphones.
Yeah. I don't care what anyone.
All right,
I'm all done caring.
We're gonna move to the back row. I'm gonna start in the middle.
Sure.
And producer Chris helped clarify for me. It was actually Judge who had the DK Metcalf trade because the splurge that Anthony Prohaska had was Javon Holland. And that
Is that really a splurge?
um uh
Is it going to
everyone
be?
I think he gets paid the highest of any safety. Now, how much the highest paid safety gets is to be determined, but over the cap's got 15 million, Spotrac's got 18 million, PFF's got 17 million. We're not going to pay a guy $15 million. It would be
No.
like, oh, the market's not there, the market's not there, the market that isn't there. Oh my gosh, Javon Holland signed with the Bills for 12 million. Like that would
Yeah,
be
I think
the
that's where I think he should be.
like if that's where it ends up and it's like, oh, the Bills signed Javon Holland for 3 years, $36 million. It's like, oh, okay. Immediately people will ask, well, yeah, but is it going to be Javon Holland and Cole Bishop or Javon Holland and Taylor Rapp? And the answer is, I don't care. It involves Javon Holland. There is no scenario where the question goes, well, do we really need Javon Holland when we're not sure who would start out of Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop? No, it doesn't matter. One of those guys would now become a backup because we added Javon Holland.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wrote him on my wish list because it's a wish list.
Yeah, it's
And
great.
I like cool things.
Would
love
way
that.
more realistic. Similarly, in a vein of players I don't think we're going to sign, like Talanoa Hufanga. He was a ball hawk in San
Yeah.
Francisco. I think that'd be really
He's gonna
fun.
yeah.
A guy, everybody, all the Syracuse fans that listen to us want us to say Andre Cisco. That would be really cool too. I think he's going to get a starting job somewhere. The tier that I can convince myself of, where it's like, hey, come on in. Maybe you beat out Rapp and Cole Bishop. You might start, or you might just be a nicely paid third safety. I think maybe Julian Blackman or Jordan Fuller are now at that stage where they're probably not getting like a guaranteed starting spot somewhere, and they can convince themselves that, oh, well, I could beat out that kid from Utah, and I could beat out Taylor Rapp. I can come in and earn a starting spot, and if you give me a deal with some incentives, or if I am the starter, I make some money, I'll bet on myself. I could see one of those guys losing the musical chairs and ended up being that guy, and now being this year's DeMar Hamlin, like, hey, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's week one and this guy's the starter, and it ends up being Taylor Rapp and Julian Blackman or Taylor Rapp and Jordan Fuller. I could see that.
I want Jeremy Chin to come in and push Cole Bishop for a job,
Yeah.
or even push Taylor Rapp. I'm not it's sneaky a room that I'm concerned about going into the offseason. I'm concerned about Taylor Rapp's ability.
I don't think we have a single elite safety. I think, yeah, I said last year I wasn't sure we were going to have two starters. I'm not sure we had a starting caliber guy, and they played okay. And then you showed a lot of the stuff that like people were more down on DeMar Hamlin than they should have been. Taylor Rapp had a really high havoc rate. You know, there were some consistency things, but he was consistently making plays and causing negative plays and turnovers, and that kind of outweighed anything that he gave up otherwise. But we certainly are nowhere near the peaks of, you know, peak Hyde and Poyer levels or having two consistently top 10 safeties. We certainly didn't have that.
Yeah.
And now going into this next year, I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't feel great. There's injury concerns with Rapp, consistency concerns there. Cole Bishop hasn't fully yet developed, and nothing gets him. It's going into year two, so I want to give him that time, and I want some insurance there. Jeremy Chin would be doing that. I think Blackman could, to your point, could be a guy where, like, if for some reason Cole Bishop doesn't take the job and run with it, having a person there. DeMar Hamlin's probably run its course, but if the musical chairs doesn't work out and Pittsburgh goes another direction and he's number 3 in the floor on that, I think that's okay too. But I think this is also still a position that you attack in the draft. Cam Lewis isn't going to be here forever. He's going to age out of that kind of hybrid
everybody
role
talks about D tackle, DN, corner. Like, there's a non-zero chance that safety is the first pick in the draft in the first round. Like, there are a couple of those guys, like the Watts kid out of Notre Dame and that big monster kid out of South Carolina. There's a couple guys who are stud. The kid out of Georgia, Malachi Starks. Like, there are some studs where, like, if they're available, there is a scenario where they are the best player on the board at 30. And like, oh, look, we just inserted an awesome, rangy, athletic safety right off the bat. Boom, there you go. Taylor, Cole, you guys compete for the other spot.
Yeah, have at it. And the best case scenario is having 3 safeties you trust to play going into the season. Another guy I might even like take a little bit of a wire on is Melifonwu from the Lions. Obviously, he was a huge draft crush for me. That frame, 6'3", 210. I think you can move him around too. He can be that type of dime backer type thing. He'd be another lower end one that's not going to push necessarily to start. You'd have to feel good about Rapp and Bishop, but I would swing on that freak athleticism, freak traits, and hope that he's developed over the last few years in Detroit.
I love it. I love it. I think all those make sense. I do think we see two additions at safety, similar to my comments at defensive tackle. I think we bring in a veteran who is either like, I don't actually think it's going to be a Hollander, a Hufanga, or someone like their Cisco. I think it's going to be more of that Blackman Fuller chin level where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you're for sure going to play. You're for sure going to be game day active. You're going to have a shot to win the job, or you'll just be a regularly used third safety that we have as packages that make sense for us. So come on in and compete and bet on yourself that you win the job. I think one of those, and then a draft pick, and those are our four guys. It's draft pick, veteran that can compete, Bishop, Rapp. I think those are our four guys.
I got my take for the Syracuse fans is I don't think Cisco's that much better than DeMar Hamlin. I think he's in that tier, to be honest.
Again, honestly, the Venn diagram of people yelling at you for not immediately giving the job to Dorian Williams and the people who are furious
about Andre
you saying that
Cisco.
Andre Cisco isn't that much better than DeMar Hamlin is one circle. Like, it's the same people, and they just yelled at you for a second time.
Yeah, they probably are also already muted, so
so you're not going to know.
That I won't even hear it.
All right, one last position here.
Sure.
And it's the cornerback, and this is what I'm going to make
one, man.
and I'm also going to make it our here to help for our friends over there at William Mattar Law Offices, because I think, a lot of attention is on the one tech and a lot of attention is on the need there, and that's a very realistic need. I think super sneaky, like, we got to find somebody that we can trust here at this other cornerback spot. And I think we saw, like, I loved Rasul Douglas. I loved him as a leader. I loved his mind in the room. We saw him hit that wall, watching him chase some of those guys across the field. And the teams realized, oh, if we just run mesh and bring our guy on a crosser, whether it's K or Elam or Rasul Douglas, they can't do this, and they'll just be they'll lose them, and they'll just be chasing them from behind. And being able to find a guy who has the athleticism, the physicality, the football IQ, not to get lost in coverage and to be there. I think this is the sneakiest need for this team, whether it's the first round pick, whether it's maybe a bigger signing than what we realize. It's
not a great year to make a bigger signing.
I'm shocked at how many people think Rasul Douglas is going to get $10 million. Good for him. God bless him if he gets it. That ain't going to be from. I don't want to bring him back. Period.
PFF has him 2 years, 13 average, 13.25 average.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Over the cap was at 11. Like, those are smart guys. Those are guys who, like, know contracts and just I'm out. Like, I'm out. That is insane. I don't want him back for $5 million a year. Like, let alone 13.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So at the high
you don't think the Bills are in on the DJ Reed, Ward high end?
No, I know. There was somebody who tried to say there
Benford's going to get that money
of the Bills in for Travarius Ward. Like, sure, that'd be awesome. We're not paying the Christian Benford extension that's coming and another. We're not going to have two. We're not going to have $40 million worth of cornerbacks. Like, we're not going to have another seven. Travarius Ward's going to get $17 to $20 million. Like,
yeah.
Like, again, if I'm wrong, okay, great. So I will give a sneaky one. A guy that I think is a very high likelihood release candidate who maybe needs to take a 1-year prove-it deal. I think Jair Alexander's in a weird spot from Green Bay. I think he still gets, if his prove-it year, I think is probably more like a 1-year mercenary $15 million deal, not like a value that we are going to want to sign someone at. So my Goldilocks that I think maybe we could thread the needle on is a guy who got hurt in New Orleans, but had like elite upside when he played well, and is Paulson Adebo. I think Paulson Adebo is a guy that, if he doesn't get the long-term deal that he wants, but looks to say, hey, where could I go in a good defense with great secondary coaches that sets guys up to look good, that consistently produces above their assumed talent level on a 1-year deal to then get the big deal that I want? I could see somebody pitching Paulson Adebo that place is Buffalo. Come here, again, if somebody offers him 4 years, 60 million, and he gets 15 million per year, he might just take it. But if it's like, hey, you're gonna have to sign like a 1 year, $10 million deal and then try to go get your $20 million a year deal, because I think it's in the range of outcomes that he is a 17 to $20 million a year guy. He would be my like little bit of a splurge, but we get kind of the injury bounce back discount. And that, yeah, we know we're probably only getting him for 1 year, but then we get the compensatory pick when he leaves, and we turn that around and they get a legit like third round comp pick because he'll get like 20 million a year. That's my one. If I did a little bit of a splurge, he's a guy I could talk myself into.
Sure. I was not I think he will get paid pretty well. I like him as a player.
More likely that he gets paid.
Yeah, it's not like an ACL injury. It was a broken bone, and so I think he'll bounce back pretty well. But this would be if there's a scenario where he's not going to get paid, that's the exact type of guy you want, right? Not even 26 yet. But buy low on an injury, get the max amount, and then let him go and get a comp pick.
Yeah.
Get that 1 year, and see ya. Good luck. Get your comp pick out of him. A guy I targeted on right from the beginning of this. People are going to hate this. I'm going to get yelled at for this one too. I like Stephon Gilmore on a 1 year deal. I really do. I have other guys on my list. I have a Debo. I have Rocky Sin. I have some other guys. Nothing that's going to necessarily.
All the things you were saying hate you. I thought you were going to say Dane Jackson.
I have Dane Jackson on my list, but I don't think Dane Jackson comes in and is your cornerback too. I think it's a competition for depth. Yeah. Which I'm fine
he
with.
He would be competing with the Jamarcus Ingram for who's game day active.
Yeah, if they want to do that, cool.
And
I like Dane
honestly,
Jackson, I think.
If Dane Jackson wants to come here and hang out and be cornerback 4 and be game day active 8 times this year, come on over, man. Yeah. Come hang out. It's great.
Yeah.
We're going to pay someone to be cornerback 4 and be game day inactive. I trust him better than Kyrie Elam.
For sure. Yeah, no, I'd bring him back. But I do think Gilmore had some injuries this year. I think if you just go look at his PFF grade, it doesn't show great. It shows a decline, but I don't believe in that stuff. I think how aggressive that defense is in Minnesota exposes cornerbacks at times, and he's an aging guy. He wouldn't be asked to be doing the same type of thing he was doing in Minnesota, even though that plays well to his play style at a younger age, blitz heavy, playing man to man. I think that he has the type of skill set that will actually translate well into what McDermott does. And I do think the Bills, despite McDermott here in recent press conferences talking about, well, don't read too into that. We're not going to switch to a lot of man. I think the trend is naturally they are playing more man, right? They're seeing some of the trends in the league. I think Gilmore could give you another good season on whatever, $5, $6, $7 million. Like,
if we're paying an aging guy, I'd probably just pay Rasul. But if you
I like Gilmore more than Rasul
got more
right
left in the tank than Rasul, I won't argue.
I think he does. But I guess sure, like either one. But the contract projections for the two couldn't be further apart. And so maybe Rasul's still way better than Gilmore, and everyone's projecting that out that way. But if it's paying Rasul 10 and paying Gilmore 6, I'm taking Gilmore every time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, for sure. I had 3 guys who are basically like somebody else's Kyrie Elam, where there's a guy who was a really high draft pick. It hasn't quite worked out that way. These guys have all played better than Elam has, but that would be the guys that would make sense to me if it's, hey, one of our top 3 picks is going to be a corner and this guy. And hey, you 2 second round pick, draft pick X plus this guy are going to compete for the cornerback 2 job, and the other one's going to be cornerback 3, and they're going to be the backup of both spots. That's Jeff Okudah. So it was a super high draft pick, bounced around, actually played decent in Houston, had some moments, didn't work out in Detroit or in Atlanta, bounced around a couple of places. Maybe could come in and compete like that. Similarly, CJ Henderson didn't work out initially, got moved, played a little bit better, looked reasonable. And then a guy who is like our Sebastian Joseph Day or some of the guys who we've like wanted, Tier Tart, Akello Witherspoon, a guy that like in Pittsburgh, when Los Angeles like has crazy length, a lot, like is kind of a lesser version of Rasul Douglas, like has the wingspan size, ball skills coming forward, really nice in zone, but is younger and athletic still and has those traits. Those are the kind of guys where I could see, hey, you bring in one of those guys, let him compete with the second round pick, and that, hey, one of those 2 will be the starter and the other one will be cornerback 3, and we feel a lot better about it. And if you have those guys and like a Dane Jackson as cornerback 4, I know feel really good about that room. If you tell me that we have Christian Benford, Akello Witherspoon, a second round pick, and Dane Jackson, and that's our 4 outside corners. I feel really good about that going into the season. We're in great shape.
Yeah. Caleb Farley might be in that list of
Yeah.
guys of
Yes,
like,
he would be
hey,
right there.
former first round pick, you've got
Yeah.
some size, maybe you'll figure it out
The
this
same way
time.
that someone's going to give Kyer Elam that chance to come compete somewhere else to be like,
Yeah,
hey, maybe it just wasn't the right fit in Buffalo. Let's see if we can coach you up.
yeah.
We're going to do that with somebody else here too.
Brendan Bean talked about it even in his press conference of like, there's not a lot of guys that are 6'2", almost 200 pounds. Like even if they haven't worked out yet to this point in their
Akello
careers,
Witherspoon is.
there's a reason they were those types of picks, or there's a reason they've been on rosters continuously, because those traits are rare to find. So if you can get a guy, maybe they haven't panned out elsewhere yet, but just getting a 6'2", almost 200
Yes.
pound guy that can run, bring him in the building every chance you get.
Absolutely, absolutely, and again, we'll see. And if we've had that track record with other guys at other positions,
Yeah,
and now you tell me there's a chance with like a Jeff Okuda who comes in with his measurables and his possibility with our defensive back coaching pedigree, and we have a chance to maybe squeeze the best anybody can get out of them, I'll take those chances.
yeah. I'm going to start the Daquan Hardy, Daquan Hardy
I
stands
didn't.
here this summer. That's coming for me, just so you know.
I'm going to have him as, hey, we finally have a legit, real backup nickel corner, rather than we've always had this like weird, um, whatever, like, hey, maybe we could move this guy over and kind of pretend to be the backup nickel. We haven't had an actual backup nickel in forever. I think Daquan Hardy could be that guy, and he'll battle Brandon Codrington for the return jobs,
Yeah.
and we'll have those guys there battle it out, and he has a chance to make it. I know
So I can't say
you,
he's the
Eric
next
Anthony,
Roby Coleman. I can't say
yeah,
that kind of
liked
stuff.
that his corner ability was better than people expected in the flashes that we saw play. Then he got hurt, and we never really got to find out. I think he is
Go.
a sneaky name to watch here in the off
I
season,
can't
or
wait
as
for camp.
in camp. He's going to be back and be there to
Oh
compete.
yeah.
It's just going to be a matter of maybe he's to be taken a little bit more seriously than some
I
people
hope
expect.
so. Let's go. All right.
All right, anything else for the people here?
No, man, that's it. Now it's unfortunately it's time to get into draft mode. This is honestly, I know there's a lot of draft lovers out there. We have plenty of content for you that on Cover One. There's way better draft guys than me, Greg. I can't speak for you, but this is my least favorite time of the year because I'm going to do the most amount of work and none of it's going to be correct. And yeah, I'm about to waste the next 2 months of my life on draft
Yeah,
content.
yeah. So, if you want to know more about that, again, our guys here to help was for our friends over at William Mattar Law Offices. Hurt in a car, call William Mattar 844-444-4444. Always looking out for you, helping out with everything that's going on there. We will be having some fun. Again, as Aaron said, getting into the rest of here. Our next show after this will be reacting to the first wave of free agency, which is crazy that we're already back into that mode. Kind of seeing where these things go and getting everything as ready as it can be as we go into everything else that's going on, and then kind of fitting things in. And as we get out of this first couple waves of free agency, we will be getting right into draft. We'll know what our draft priority positions, because we'll fill some of the big needs in free agency. Then we'll get into some of our targeted jobs, bring in some of our folks who are mock drafts, doing mock drafts ourselves, having a good time, and going right up to draft mode. So stay right with us. All the other shows here at Cover One, the Film Room, Disguise Coverage, Under Review, Air Raid Hour, all the different shows. Make sure you're checking everything out. But on behalf of our fantastic producer, Chris Kepner, and my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.